Okay, and I have spotlighted the video, so you should be able to see it large. If you cannot see it large or you don't see it large, what you want to do on your device is you want to switch to active speaker. Since I've already spotlighted it. And oh yeah, I can absolutely show a close-up of what we are doing. So if you want to take a picture, I'm going to put that in view here. Is that close enough or do you need closer? If you need closer, I can do closer too. Just let in these two people, Helen and Barbie. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Suzanne. Perfect. Yeah, if anyone needs to take a picture of this, you can take a picture. We're going to be needing mostly our yellow, green, and red watercolors, and also some purple and blue. As far as colored pencils go, we're going to need brown and red and also green. So we're going to be sort of highlighting with those, not highlighting. I guess what I'm trying to say is, just making it a little bit more of a flourish with the colored pencils. So welcome everyone that just came in. I'm Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops for those that are new. So happy you can be here tonight for our watercolor and colored pencil holiday holly here. So we're going to get started with doing the drawing, and then we'll get into the watercolor. And then as things get dry, we're then going to add some of our colored pencil. So it's not as much colored pencil as watercolor, obviously. The colored pencil is just sort of in addition. I'm going to show this up close just so you can kind of see some of the detail here. So for instance, on this leaf, I went over it in brown. This is brown and a little bit of green. And you can see that here on this leaf too, it's a bit more of a scratchy look. That's the pencil. And I did that purposely. And then as far as the berries, same thing. I'm just showing that up real close so you can see the detail here, especially on this berry. You can see that that's dark red colored pencil. So just kind of wanted to show you that on what we're going to be doing with the colored pencils. And now we're going to get started with the drawing. If I'm going too fast for anyone, just let me know and I'll slow down. Okay, so, and just a reminder, you'll be drawing lightly. I'll be drawing darker so you can see it on Zoom. So lightly means that you should be having it so light that you can still see it, but it's really light. That way, when we start in the watercolor, it won't show through the watercolor as much. Of course, with this one, it's actually not too much of a problem because it's a very sketchy kind of watercolor. So I say that, but it's if you get a little darker with your pencil, it's okay. But we'll also be lightening up a bit too. All right, so we're going to start on the top left corner of our paper here. And we're going to start with this leaf right here. And the way we're going to be making the leaves is we're going to be starting with the vein of each of the leaves. So basically going in the middle so that we know which way our leaf is going. So I'm going to start here. Whoops, sorry about that. Let me just adjust my paper here. So we're going to start that right here on the left. I'm also going to just remove a little bit of the shadow that's happening here before I start. There we go. That might help a little bit. Okay, so starting with the vein. So again, I'm going to be drawing darker so you can see this. This is the first leaf at the top. And once you make the vein, We're then going to make the holly. And so it's going to be a combination of sort of, rounded, sort of rounded shapes, right? As we get towards the tip or end of the holly. So something basic, very basic like that. So you're going to think about that design for each of these, even though they're going to be slightly different. And then from that one, we're going to start with the first berry, since it's sort of towards this leaf. And as a matter of fact, it's a little bit in front of it. And so your berry is just going to be, roundish. We do most of the detail with our watercolor and our colored pencil. And then we're going to come down here for the next berry. And that one is kind of directly underneath it. So again, we kind of want to do it circular, obviously. But we're going to make a little bit of the shape here of the inside of the berry. And I'm going to go closer here, since I think a lot of you took a picture of the original. Is that okay? If anybody else needs the picture, just let me know. I wish there was a way to somehow kind of put it, well, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, if anybody needs the picture, let me know and I will put it back into the screen. I'm going to periodically put it back into the screen, but I definitely want you to catch the details on this. So we've got our two berries. We made the first holly, and now we're going to make the other holly that's sort of coming underneath this berry. So again, we're going to go into the middle of our leaf, right? So it's sort of turning downward. And then we start winging out our leaves into points until we get to the bottom. Let's see, I think I didn't add enough of the points on this one. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I kind of started going a little rogue on this. Not that that's a bad thing. You can go rogue with your holiday holly. Doesn't have to look exactly like mine. And half the time, mine doesn't even look exactly like mine. And then obviously you're going to go and do the same on the other side. But this one, again, it starts right near the berry, goes inward, and it gets a little bit wide going towards the bottom. We only have 2 points to this one. And again, if you want to do it a little differently, it's fine too. So we're going to continue. We're going to come right up here to the first berry we drew. And we're going to create the light sort of stems, or, stem areas of the holly. So there's one that's kind of hanging overhead, and then another one that's slightly longer, just like this. And then there is a berry that kind of intersects both of them. So you may have to kind of readjust that section. to make it fit. So maybe your berry has to be a little closer to that, or these have to be slightly longer, whatever you decide, and whatever looks the best. And then we're going to continue here. The next leaf is over here. So again, starting in the middle. This one is going to come out towards us, and this is one of the bigger leaves. So you're going to go towards the bottom of your page. And then you're going to come right back to the top. And we're going to start on the left side. We're going to make the curve smaller, and it's going to get bigger. Our points are going to get bigger as it goes towards us, since that's what would happen with our leaf here. Oh, let me let Sandy in. So we've got a big point here happening. And then we've got our bigger one happening towards us and kind of fanning out towards us. Welcome, Sandy. We're still in the drawing phase of the watercolor and colored pencil. Holiday Holly, hello. This is also being recorded, just so you know. So we're now going to come over here to the right, and I'm going to fix my berry just a little bit so that it's a little bigger. And it's a little closer to my leaf. There we go. Okay, so now doing the same thing on the right side, having those points. Sorry about that. I forgot to mention the paper. I apologize. So it is actually landscape. If you did it portrait, that's okay too. You know, it's just a little, might be a little smaller. So sorry that I didn't mention that to everyone. Thank you, Sandy, for asking. Yeah, so this is landscape mode. But again, if you already started, it's okay. It will look just as good. So now we're just trying to finish this leaf as we head downward on the right side and catch up with the other side here. Also making it look like holly. I'm going to move my camera up just a little bit here. Oops. Sorry about that.
Rita, I feel like holly leaves as we're going are like snowflakes. So
yeah,
right, like there are no two that are the same. So
no,
all the little whatever we do is a holly leaf, right?
yeah, I love that, Karen.
Okay.
No, absolutely. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. So especially how I've made them. But I've looked at holly leaves, and there are some that are smaller, some that curl in more on the edges. And you can absolutely do that a bit with your other ones, you know, as we're going. I curled this one just slightly, as you can see. But if you want to curl more of them, I'll show you how to do that too. So onward, we're moving on up here, and we're going to go above here, and we're going to make this leaf down to the right. So it first kind of comes again towards our holly, or from our holly. And then we're going to make, so we kind of have a little bit of a stem here, and then we're going to make the center as it kind of droops downward. This one is a very loose leaf. That sounds really funny. It's like loose leaf paper. So the one we're doing now is this one. As you can see, we're going to curl a little bit up here. Over here is very loose. It's going to curve and go downward. Okay, so we've got the middle done. We're coming back up here and we're creating the first kind of point here. And there's going to be 2 berries that come off of this. So before we continue with the leaf, we're just going to draw those 2 berries next to each other. So this one is just a little bit longer, more like a grape shape, as is the other. And actually, I have this one on the right, just a little bit higher than the other one. And again, you know, more of like a grapish shape. Just check the chat because I think I saw something in the chat. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so once we have those happening, we're now going to come back to our leaf here. We made the first kind of point, and now we're going to start to make the next one that rounds out a little bit, but goes towards the berry. And then we've got another one that's curving outward. And you're going to work downward as you're doing this. So this one is kind of a wide, kind of curving outward. And then down. And like I mentioned, this one is very loose as far as drawing wise. So I'm leaving some space over here that I haven't touched the pencil with. And then I come over here and curl this. And then I'm going to come back up. And leave that there. And we're going to start back up here at the top so that then by the time we meet over here, we can figure out any issues if we have to make things smaller or whatever.
Anita, it's Barbie. I
Sure.
just got on my computer, so I'm going to ask you to let me in, and I'm going to leave the meeting. I'm on my phone.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. I'll see you in a few seconds.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so here we're coming back over here now. And we're now just going to complete the rest of those points as we're moving downward. There's Barbie. Okay. And then we come down and meet up right over here. And this is where you kind of may need to, you know, make something a little longer or a little wider, you know, your points. Hey, Barbie, I saw you as soon as you came in. So welcome back. And I'm going to do just a little adjustment here now to the center line, the vein line, just so that it's a little more in the center of the drawing of that leaf. And then we're going to now finally draw the last leaf, and then we can get started with the watercolor, lightening everything up. So now we're going to start back over here where we were, but we're going to be adding another kind of little branch.
Excuse me, Anita, it's Barbie
Yeah.
again. I could see
Hi.
it better on my phone, but I can hardly see it on the screen. Is there anything I can do?
Are you, what device are you on? Are you on a computer? Are you on an iPad?
A laptop, computer?
Okay, so are you on speaker view or gallery view? So basically, if you're on gallery view, you will see everyone else is little square.
Yeah,
You don't want to see that. You want to just see mine kind of, big. So you want to be on speaker view. So if you can click and get onto speaker view, or if you're not,
okay, okay.
yeah,
It worked.
did that work? Awesome.
Yes, thank you, Anita.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Good, good. Okay, so we're going to do this final leaf here. So we started off with our little stem here in a sense, and then from that stem, we're just going to go sort of in the middle of it in order to draw the middle part of the leaf. So I'll say that again, and I'm going to go up close so you can see. So we started off here kind of with our little sort of stem area on the outside, but then we want to draw the actual vein just a little bit that goes in the middle. So that goes in the middle of the two lines that we created for the start of our leaf. Okay, so now we're going to make this on the left side. We've got a little bit of a round part happening, and then this one is turning in a bit. Now, again, just like what Karen said, Karen, I loved what you said. It's very much like snowflakes, you can draw these different shapes, different sizes. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. You can add some character to it. So just have fun with it. I like to make the ends kind of pointy, kind of sticking out, because that's what I've seen on some of the holly trees. I haven't seen any in a few years, actually. But we used to have a neighbor that had a holly tree, and I think it died. So it kind of, I haven't seen one in a while, but I love them. They're so pretty. So once you're finished on the left, you then obviously come on over to the right, and you're going to complete the right side of that leaf. And then when you're done with that, you now want to just clean up any smudges that you have. I definitely started smudging all over the place. So you want to clean up any smudges you have on the outside of the leaves and the inside of the leaves. You may also want to lighten up some of your lines. And then also, if you have multiple lines, construction lines, you might want to clean those up too, or you might want to keep them for some character with this drawing, since this drawing is a lot looser. That's okay too, especially since we're going to be using colored pencils. You can always sort of go over anything in colored pencils. So this is definitely a looser drawing here, where we're not as worried about the pencil marks, or the pencil lines, I should say. So as you can see, I'm just kind of lightening up a little bit around. taking off some of the graphite here. And you know what, maybe a little over here. Okay. Just gonna move the angle a little bit. And now it's time to get started with our watercolor. So the first color we're going to do is yellow. So you can put your pencils away at this point. And we're going to get into our yellow. And what we want to do with this is we want to have it very richly colored. So we're going to be using the yellow in the leaves very, very darkly, or I should say, we're not using it exactly like very watery, I should say. So we want it to be a lot of pigment on our brush. So you do want to wet your brush. And then I'm going to grab my watercolor set here to show you. Okay, so we're going to get into the yellow. So I'm really going to, I have a little bit of water on my brush, just enough to wet it. And now I'm really kind of digging into my yellow. And we're going to start and we're going to color all of the leaves yellow. So it should be richly colored with yellow. You know, and then we'll be adding, oops, sorry, I must have bumped the arm here. Okay, so we're going to continue and we're going to add or paint all of these yellow. You do want to, you know, definitely stay, or I should say, you know, make sure you go even on the tips of each of the sections here. So as you can see, it's nice and kind of vibrantly yellow here. And then we'll start adding in our green. And we're going to add blue into the leaves. So they're going to be nice and richly colored. And just keep going around all of the leaves here and adding that yellow, that first base of yellow. You also want to add yellow. Basically, you're adding yellow to the leaves, the stems of the holly leaves. So not the berries yet. We're not getting into those, but we're just adding our first layer of watercolor to the holly leaves, including their stems. Or stem areas, I should say. I hope you all find this painting as relaxing as I did when I created it. And now that I've done this probably about 6 or 7 times, this tends to be a popular one. It's nice because I feel like it's not so difficult that, you know, you can really make the holly leaves the way you want for the most part. And it's okay because they still end up looking pretty much like holly leaves, as long as you kind of get the shapes right from the, from the start. So it's funny. The other thing, my husband and I have been doing, I love snowflakes. And I actually love cutting snowflakes. So I know it sounds so funny. I find them relaxing. So and throughout the year, I'll sit and I'll, just sit and like start to cut a snowflake. My husband thinks I'm weird when it's not winter time. He's like, "You cutting snowflakes?" Yes, I am. I don't do it all the time. I'm not saying it's something that I do all the time. It's just every once in a while. But we're making some for, I have this kind of little display in our bedroom on, on like my dresser. And it's a village, like, it's like white little houses and they light up. And then my husband had the idea and he said, we should string some little snowflakes like right across your mirror. And so now I have him making snowflakes. He's actually downstairs making snowflakes. So he's drinking beer and making snowflakes. So we'll see what these snowflakes look like. So funny. But it was his idea. So we will see. Oh, I'm Heidi. I'm totally going to share what they look like because I'm curious if they just, get all cut or, and I told him like originally, we did a few last night. We were watching some shows and we were on the couch kind of doing a few and so I cut the circles first because I find it's better if you cut them in a circle. And then we started making smaller ones. I said, I think they have to be smaller if we're going to string them. And he cut like 2 of them where, it's hard because you're with the scissors and you're trying to cut them. You're trying to cut, cuts in folded paper. And he had folded the paper a lot. And then he kind of snipped off one by accident and kind of snipped half of the snowflake. So yeah, we'll see how beer induced these snowflakes are. It should be pretty interesting. So your snowflakes. Now I'm on snowflakes in my head. Your holly should look very yellow at this point. And now we want to start getting into the green. So I'm going to grab my watercolor set here again. And we're going to do the same thing as, so basically.
Anita,
Yeah.
can you hold up a sec? I'm not done.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, if anybody is not done, thank you for letting me know. I'm just kind of mixing into my green here. We're going to do the same thing that we did with our yellow. We're using it pretty vibrantly. It does not have to be wet on wet, actually. And actually, we weren't really doing it wet on wet. So basically, wet on wet would be if you wet the paper first and then you added the color. That would make it sort of bleed out into the paper, which that's kind of a nice, that's nice too. But that's not actually how I've done these. I've done it with more, I add water to the brush and then put the brush into the paint, but it's minimal water. I mean, it's not minimal in the sense of there's none. Oh, I'm sorry. Does the yellow have to stay wet? No, we don't. We actually don't want the yellow to stay wet. It should be drying at this point because we're trying to get as much color on there as possible. And then later we're going to go back and we're going to add, lighten up some stuff. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome, Sandy. Absolutely. So how you doing, Danielle? So does anybody need more time? Or are we ready for our green?
I finished my yellow.
All right. All right, so next up is our green. So again, you're going to do what you did for the yellow. You're going to add a little bit of, you're going to add some water into the green. We're going to start again with, we're going to start at the top left, this one, and we're going to start at the corners here. And basically just painting kind of slowly. And we're also going to go into the middle on the left side of the leaf here. So we're going to be doing, basically, you're kind of outlining on the inside of your leaf in green. And you want this to be pretty vibrant. So I'm going to show it up to you up close. Oops. Wait for my camera to adjust here. So that's pretty thick. So we're going to start off and we're going to be tracing all of the leaves like that. So that's our first step with the green, is we're going to do each one of the leaves like that. Also going to one side of your vein here. And you're going to find that these are going to dry a bit too. And that's what we want. You're also going to make sure that you go into the longer areas of the stem here, like with this one in particular. And you definitely want to bring your green out into the points, make them really pointy. We want very dramatic points on our leaves here. They're drama queens. You're also going to outline, as I mentioned, the two little parts of the leaves here, and then also the longer part here as well. And again, this is with your green. So you're doing the outside and the inside of the leaves, the center vein. And you're going to do that for each one. And it could be something, pretty fast. It doesn't have to be, completely perfect. I do like to go around to this last one here and make that kind of curve a bit flourishy. And then just adding a bit more of flourish over here. And you're going to continue around to all of your leaves until they are all kind of outlined. Getting very holiday-like. All right. Last one on my end here, but I will give you all more time. Okay. So they're gonna look a little something like this with, you know, an outline and in the middle here. And then our next step is going to be where we're adding some lines of green inside the leaves. So we're going to be making these kind of textures. So I'm just going to show this, the sample up close. So basically, we're going to start from each of the points and going to paint kind of inward at each of the points. We're going to be painting kind of inward. So that's the next step we're doing with these. And as you can see, we leave spots that are yellow. So we leave some of the yellow in there too. We don't want to paint over it entirely. So that's our next step that we're going to do. So we're going to get into our green again. And we'll start with this top left one up here. And so you're going to start going into each of the points and just bringing inward that green color. So I'm just going to show that a bit more up close. So it's going to look a little something like that. And you're going to do that for each of the leaves. So as you notice, I'm not worried about filling in any of the color beyond that point. This is just going to give it some texture here. So you can kind of work fast and just, you know, kind of add three strokes coming from each of those points. Around each leaf. And you might have to add some water here and there. And again, it's okay if these are drying a bit. So they should look a bit like that.
Anita, are you using just the paint from the tips, or are you adding green paint to your brush as well?
Ah, that's a good question. I am adding green paint. Yeah,
Okay.
so what I do, I get into my green paint and then I start to move the color in. And if there's still color left on it and I'm able to get to 3 or 4 points, then I do it, but then I go back as soon, and kind of reload the brush.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so they should be a bit, again, right now we're just working with more color rather than watered down yet. We're going to get there. But we want this to be pretty vibrant. And then we're going to go back in and we're going to grab our green again. And now we're going to start painting on the leaves in sort of a little bit of a haphazard way. So basically what I'm doing is not worrying if the whole leaf is covered by green. So I go in and now I'm just taking some of that green and I'm not worried about it being vibrant because I don't want it to be as vibrant, and I'm leaving some of the yellow on each of the leaves. So I take my green and as you can see, I'm kind of dabbing it on to kind of cover the leaf. Just to give it some texture here. So we're now kind of trying to cover the leaves with the green on top a bit. And I'm just going to show this up close. And then after that's applied, you're going to get into your blue and mix your green with it. So I'm coming here on the side of my plastic and I'm mixing my blue and green to kind of get this color right here. So that's like a bluish green. I mixed blue and green to get this. I know my palette's really dirty. I've been doing a lot of watercolor workshops this week and haven't been washing off my palette. The blue is going to be towards the edges again, the points of each of the parts of the holly leaf. So that's with our bluish green. So we're just going to go over it. And we're kind of dabbing on some of that color so that it's not good. We're not doing the whole leaf. We're kind of doing in the tips of each of the leaves here. This is with the bluish green. And again, you mix just, blue and green. on the side here of your plastic palette if you're using Crayolas. And now we're going into each of those points again. And we're adding that bluish green. You can even go in the middle of the leaves and trace a bit of the vein, but I want you to kind of skip and not do the whole vein because it's going to look really, it's not going to look as realistic. So I'm going to give you an example with this one. I went in and I started at the tip. I lifted my brush and I went back down again towards the edge. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And this one, I'm just going to do the tip. See how nice and vibrant that is. And maybe this one here a little bit. There we go. So it should be getting nice and bluish green at this point. And when you're done with that, you're now going to add another layer of bluish green to some of the tips here so that you have a very concentrated color happening. So again, I'm going to show you this one. I just added the bluish green here. And it doesn't, at this point, when you're going in for the kind of third go around. Oh, great, Gail. Well, I hope you have good holidays. Thank you so much for joining. So we're now going to just add some sort of parts of the bluish green to different sections now that it's a bit drier. So as you notice, this is a much thicker watercolor painting. It's almost like we're doing acrylic painting. So making some parts a little bit more vibrant, going back in here. So again, going back in here with the bluish green, and now I'm just making some parts with a little more color with the bluish green. Again, I like to kind of go towards the points. Sorry about that. Looks like I got a phone call from California, which I don't know. I don't know anyone. Well, I do know people in California, but it's not the number that I know. So again, we are now mixing the blue and the green to get a little more darker blue-green for this final layer here. So, go to some of the tips that you want to make a little more vibrant. maybe a little bit in the middle. Again, it doesn't have to be all of the tips. You can kind of skip around. Okay. So it's going to look a little something like this. Now, the other option that you can do is you can now go in with a little bit more wetness. And you can choose to, wet this a little bit to spread it, or you can leave it kind of chunky the way it is. So here's what I like to do. I just wet my brush and I'm working on this one. And just in certain sections, mostly where I've added the bluish green, I want to just blend it a little bit into a little bit of the leaf, but not so much because I kind of like that look. So I'm just going to do it here and there where I want to maybe soften a little bit of that leaf. So that's what we're doing now. Again, if you like that look, you want to keep it that way, you don't have to do this part, or you can just do it very minimally. Like I said, with this, I just went in, honestly, a little bit here and there, but I like sort of that textured part or textured parts, the holly. And I go in with little dabs of little strokes with my brush, not over the whole thing so that it gets kind of muddy. You kind of want to go with this one in with, little long strokes here, like so. And when you're satisfied with it, you can also kind of be satisfied with it right now. And we can move on to the berries, and you can kind of let that dry. And then you can kind of re-wet parts of it when you want. But the next step is then going in to our berries. And our berries are going to be a little bit of blue before we add our red. So I know that sounds really strange. But we're going to be adding a bit of blue to just parts of the berries, because the blue is the darkest parts of the berries. So we do a little bit of light outlining. So what I'm doing to the berries now are the shadow areas, or the darker areas of our berries. We're still going to go back in, obviously, with our red, but we're going to add some blue first. So right now it's going to look like blueberries. And while It's still a bit wet. You're going to go in with your red, and you're also going to go on top of that blue. But you're also going to be creating spots of the berry with the white of the paper. So basically, you're painting kind of lightly and leaving white spots of the paper as the highlight. If your brush is too wet, you definitely want to wait, and dry it off a bit. Because if not, everything will run together, and that's not what we're looking for. So this is our first layer. And we're putting the red mostly on top of the blue. So obviously you're going to get purple. And then you can kind of go into the berry very lightly with some. But for instance, these berries here at the top, in order to make that highlight at the top, I'm going to show this to you up close. So you can see that the shape of the berries are sort of grape-like, but I've left this part, the white of the paper, and then some white of the paper there, and the same with the others. That's our first layer. And you're going to let that dry. So you can kind of bounce it up and down. Or if you have a hair dryer, you can do that too. I'm just kind of going to bounce mine up and down. And then you're going to let that dry a bit. And we're going to go to our leaves one last time. So you want to make sure that your leaves are dry for the most part. You can kind of rotate your paper around to see if there are any wet spots. And we're going to be using our brown colored pencil. And also a green colored pencil. You can use a dark green or just a regular green. It's going to depend what kind of shows up. The other color you can use is a dark blue. So sort of like an indigo blue. But we're not looking for a light blue, but more of a dark blue or regular blue. If you have like Crayola set, Crayola also has, I think, like an indigo blue. I don't know where mine is right now, so I'm using another brand, but we're going to go in first with our brown. And basically, we're going to use this as going into the middle of each of our leaves here. This is our brown. And I'm going to go up close so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm adding a little bit of a sharpness here to this leaf by adding the brown. And I even go on top of the green. Now, sometimes you might not be able to do that because of the watercolor, but I'm just adding some kind of scratchy brown texture on top of the leaf, and then also in the corners of the tips. And then again, sometimes I get a little darker and go along the side. Thanks so much, Marcia. So good to see you. I will respond to your emails too. I know you sent me some things of your work. I feel like this month has just flown. Does anybody else feel that way? I feel like, honestly, I feel like since Merry Christmas. Thank you. I feel like since October, I feel like the months have flown this year. So again, I'm taking the brown and now I'm just kind of going on parts of the leaves that I want to kind of accentuate. So it's usually like the tip, and I kind of bring it out a little bit by drawing on it with the colored pencil. And then I add a little bit of some scratchy brown on top of the watercolor. So that one kind of looks like that. It's just really a textural thing. You don't have to do it, but I did for this one. And then I go in spots to accentuate, parts of it where I feel like maybe I want it to be a little bit bolder. So I'm doing that with my brown. And then the other part is you have to make sure your watercolor is dry at this point on the berries. And then you want to go in and add some red colored pencil on top of what you did. And again, I'm kind of doing a scratchy sort of thing here. I'm just going to show that up close too. So that's watercolor, colored pencil on top of watercolor. And I'm going to do the same to this one. Now, if you don't want to do it again, you can go back with your watercolors and, add more of your watercolor. I liked that combination. And I use red, a combination of red, a little bit of brown on the berries for some of the darker areas, and then even some blue, just like we did with the paint. And that same blue, so the blue that I'm talking about is sort of an indigo blue. You can also go back on top of your leaves and you can add sort of some scratchy blue on top if you want to add some texture. And again, you don't have to because we did add a lot of blue on our leaves, so might not even be able to take it. But that is our colored pencil and watercolor program. And again, you know, taking your brown, I really kind of accentuate a lot with my brown colored pencil as far as where the leaves go. Again, I'm just going to show you that up close with what I'm doing here with the brown. I'm going on the outside. And then even right on top of the leaf as well. So I'm going to stop the recording.